People think they know my story. They see the headlines. They remember the speeches, the celebrations, the protests, the prison walls. But headlines never tell the whole story. They capture moments, not the years that shaped them. If you want to understand how I arrived here, you have to go back long before politics, long before power, and long before millions of people began chanting my name. I was born in Lahore in 1952. My childhood was comfortable, but comfort never guaranteed certainty. Even as a young boy, I felt an urge to prove myself. Competition excited me. Losing frustrated me. I wanted to be better even when nobody expected it. At first, my world revolved around cricket. Every practice session felt like another chance to become someone extraordinary. I dreamed of representing Pakistan, but dreams are easy. The hard part is surviving the failures nobody sees. There were days when I questioned whether I was good enough. Every setback forced me to choose between giving up and working harder. That determination eventually carried me beyond Pakistan. Studying abroad exposed me to a different world, new ideas, new cultures, new expectations. I learned that success demanded more than talent. It required discipline, resilience, and the willingness to stand alone when necessary. I had no idea those lessons would later become more valuable than any cricket trophy. When I finally wore Pakistan's colors, the pressure was overwhelming. Millions watched every performance. Every victory brought celebration. Every defeat invited criticism. I discovered that representing a nation means carrying hopes far heavier than your own ambitions. Years passed, and the dream that had once seemed impossible became reality. In 1992, I stood at the pinnacle of my sporting career as Pakistan lifted the Cricket World Cup. The celebrations were unforgettable. Yet, something inside me remained unsettled. I kept asking myself a question that refused to disappear. Was winning on the cricket field enough? That question stayed with me long after the crowds went home. Instead of enjoying retirement, I found myself thinking about hospitals, education, and the future of my country. Many people thought I was stepping away from success. In truth, I was stepping toward a challenge far more difficult than any cricket match. Building a cancer hospital tested every ounce of determination I possessed. Raising funds seemed impossible. Skeptics doubted the vision. Doors closed. Promises disappeared. More than once, I wondered whether I had taken on a mission too large for one person. But if I had learned anything from cricket, it was that impossible battles are not always lost. I didn't realize then that this chapter was only preparing me for the most controversial journey of my life, a journey into politics, where victories would divide a nation, allies would become opponents, and every decision would be scrutinized by millions. And the first step into that world would change everything. The decision to enter politics did not happen overnight. It grew quietly, shaped by years of watching the same problems return while ordinary people continued to pay the price. I believed that if change was possible on the cricket field and through building a national cancer hospital, perhaps it was possible in government as well. I knew the challenge would be enormous. What I didn't know was how lonely the road would become. When I announced my political ambitions, the reaction was far from what many people imagine today. Crowds were small. Elections were disappointing. Critics dismissed me as someone who was successful in sports but had no place in politics. Every television debate seemed to ask the same question in different words. Can a cricketer really lead a country? Those doubts echoed everywhere I went. Sometimes they were spoken directly to my face. Other times they appeared in newspaper columns or television discussions. I listened to them all. Some criticism was fair, some was harsh, but none of it made the journey easier. Years passed with little political success. Election after election brought setbacks. My party struggled to gain seats. Many supporters lost hope. Others quietly walked away, convinced that the dream would never become reality. There were moments when even close observers wondered whether my political career had already reached its highest point. I often found myself standing before small gatherings, speaking with the same conviction even when only a handful of people were listening. It was impossible to ignore the contrast. I had once played before packed stadiums, filled with thousands of cheering fans. Now I was asking people to believe in an idea that seemed increasingly distant. Still, I refused to abandon the mission. As the years moved forward, Pakistan itself continued to change. Public frustration over governance, corruption, and economic challenges became part of everyday conversations. More young people began demanding accountability and reform. Social media created entirely new ways for political messages to spread, allowing supporters and critics alike to speak directly to millions. Gradually, larger crowds began appearing at rallies. People who had never attended political gatherings before started listening. Volunteers joined the movement. The atmosphere shifted. Whether they agreed with me or not, more people were paying attention. But growing popularity also brought stronger opposition. Political rivals challenged my policies, my experience, and my promises. Public debates became more intense. Every speech was analyzed. Every interview produced headlines. Supporters celebrated each rally. Opponents questioned every claim. The country's political landscape grew increasingly polarized. There were protests. There were negotiations. There were moments of optimism. There were moments of deep uncertainty. Every step forward seemed to create another obstacle. Then came the elections of 2018. The campaign was unlike anything I had experienced before. The energy was unmistakable. Crowds filled public spaces. Expectations reached extraordinary levels. Supporters believed a new chapter was beginning. Critics warned that governing would prove far more difficult than campaigning. Election night arrived with tension across the country. As results began to emerge, every update carried enormous significance. Some celebrated, others disputed the outcome. Debate continued well beyond the counting of votes. Regardless of political opinion, one thing had become clear. I was about to face the greatest challenge of my public life. Winning an election was only the beginning. Now came the responsibility of governing a nation facing serious economic pressures, complex foreign policy decisions, and deeply divided political opinions. Every decision would be examined. Every success would be measured. Every mistake would be amplified. The office that so many people dream about can quickly become one of the loneliest places in the country, and I was about to discover exactly why. The day I stepped into the Prime Minister's office, I understood something that few people ever see from the outside. Campaigns are fueled by promises. Governing is defined by difficult choices. Every morning brought new reports, urgent meetings, and decisions that affected millions of lives. There was no pause button. I quickly realized that every action would satisfy some people and disappoint others. Economic pressures were mounting. Inflation became a growing concern for many families. Global events added uncertainty. And then the COVID-19 pandemic changed daily life around the world. The pandemic tested governments everywhere, including Pakistan. Hospitals faced immense pressure, businesses struggled, and families worried about their health and livelihoods. Every decision carried trade-offs. Public debate intensified as different groups argued over what the right course should be. At the same time, political tensions continued to rise. My supporters believed the government was pursuing accountability and reform. My opponents argued that my administration had fallen short of its promises. Television debates grew louder. Social media became a constant battleground of competing narratives. As the months passed, governing became increasingly difficult. Alliances shifted. Political negotiations grew more complicated. Every vote in Parliament seemed to carry enormous weight. I knew that in politics, today's ally could become tomorrow's critic. Then came one of the most challenging periods of my political career. In early 2022, opposition parties united behind a vote of no confidence. The political atmosphere became charged with uncertainty. Every meeting, every public statement, and every parliamentary development was closely followed across the country. Supporters gathered in large numbers, believing the government could survive. Opponents believed the numbers had changed. The days leading up to the vote were filled with speculation. Would the government remain in office? Would Parliament decide otherwise? Nobody could answer with certainty. When the vote finally took place, the outcome marked a turning point in Pakistan's political history. My government lost the vote of no confidence, and I left office. It was the first time a Pakistani prime minister had been removed through that constitutional process. Leaving office did not end the political struggle. Instead, it opened an entirely new chapter. I returned to public rallies, where thousands of supporters gathered to hear my message. Across the country, political polarization deepened. Supporters continued to express strong backing for me, while critics remained equally vocal in their opposition. The debate over Pakistan's political future became even more intense. Legal cases followed. Court appearances became part of everyday life. At various points, I faced arrests and periods of imprisonment related to ongoing legal proceedings, while I and my party publicly challenged many of the allegations and decisions. Those matters have remained the subject of legal and political dispute. From inside a prison cell, time felt different. The walls were quiet, the uncertainty was not. I found myself wondering what would happen next, not only to me, but to the movement that had grown over decades. Outside those walls, supporters continued to rally. Critics insisted that the legal process should take its course. The country remained deeply divided. I couldn't know how history would judge those days. All I knew was that the next chapter of my life, and perhaps one of the most controversial chapters in Pakistan's political history, was still being written. There is something prison teaches that no victory ever can. When the noise disappears, when the crowds are gone, and when every day feels almost identical, you are left with only your thoughts. Titles no longer matter. Applause no longer matters. What remains is the question every public figure must eventually face. What did my journey truly mean? I had experienced extraordinary highs and painful lows. I had lifted the Cricket World Cup. I had helped establish a cancer hospital that continues to serve patients. I had stood before millions as Prime Minister. I had also faced political defeat, legal battles, imprisonment, and constant public scrutiny. No single headline could capture all of it. Supporters saw my story as one of perseverance against overwhelming odds. Critics viewed many of my decisions differently and questioned my leadership and policies. Those contrasting perspectives remain part of Pakistan's political conversation today. History rarely belongs to one voice alone. It is shaped by evidence, debate, and the passage of time. Looking back, I understand that politics is unlike sport. In cricket, the scoreboard eventually settles the contest. In politics, there is rarely a final scoreboard. Every generation examines the same events through a different lens. Decisions praised in one moment may be criticized later. Decisions criticized today may be viewed differently years from now. That reality forced me to accept something I had resisted for much of my life. No leader controls how history remembers them. They only control the choices they make while they have the opportunity. Through every triumph and setback, one lesson remained constant. Resilience is not built when everything goes according to plan. It is built when plans fall apart, when criticism grows louder than praise, and when uncertainty becomes part of everyday life. There were days when the future seemed impossible to predict. There were moments when the next chapter appeared completely beyond my control. Yet every challenge demanded the same response: keep moving forward, even without knowing how the story would end. The political debates surrounding my tenure, my removal from office, and the legal proceedings that followed continue today. Different people interpret these events in very different ways, and many questions remain the subject of ongoing public discussion and legal processes. Those debates are part of Pakistan's democratic journey and will continue to be examined by historians, journalists, courts, and citizens for years to come. If there is one hidden truth in my story, it is not a secret conspiracy or a single dramatic event. It is something far simpler. Behind every speech, every election, every celebration, and every controversy is a human being carrying hope, doubt, determination, and fear. Public life magnifies every success and every mistake, but it never removes the humanity of the person living through it. Whether people remember me as a cricketer, a philanthropist, a political reformer, or a controversial leader is ultimately beyond my control. What remains is the journey itself, a journey marked by ambition, sacrifice, achievement, setbacks, and an enduring belief that the future can always be different from the past. And perhaps the final chapter of that story has not yet been written.